And away we go. Alright then. So let's see what is floating about in the news today. Bugger. Just look at it. They're everywhere these days. They surely are. OpenAI launches GPT-5.2 heated competition with Google. On Thursday, OpenAI launched GPT-3, rolling it out to ChatGPT paid users and developers via the API in three flavors: Instant, Thinking, and Pro. CEO Sam Altman issued a code-red memo urging a ChatGPT shift amid traffic declines and Google competition, but OpenAI executives said GPT 5.2 was under months of prior development. On benchmarks, GPT 5.2 registered new marks on GD Pavel across 44 occupations and SWE Bench Pro at 55.6%, with Pro scoring 93.2%, Thinking solving 40.3% on Tier 1 to 3 problems, and featuring a 400,000 token context window with a 128,000 max output token limit. OpenAI is targeting developers and tooling ecosystem with steep API pricing and $1.4 trillion in infrastructure commitments, raising cost concerns. Despite shipping without image upgrades, OpenAI said, on image gen, nothing to announce today, but more to come, and plans a January model, adult mode next year, and Project Garlic in 2026. Oh boy, the AI industry is ramping up, and ramping up they are. So, what is any government going to do about the rise of artificial intelligence? Well, it's simple. Pass legislation that limits AI's influence across multiple sectors and this is just my suggestion, limit how many daily and weekly tasks are performed by artificial intelligence, humanoid robots, and other automated entities. And whilst AI as it stands now aren't going to take our jobs instantly, but at the rate AI is growing, the most vulnerable jobs in terms of how easy it is to implement AI to replace humans if employees ever so want to, those kinds of jobs would likely be gone in the next few years. Most jobs would barely be on its feet in decades from now. So wherever you work right now, enjoy the job you have whilst you still have a job and all of your co-workers are human. And only human. This is only the beginning of the AI uprising. EU countries agree temporary €3 flat customs fee for small imported parcels. The European Union will start collecting a €3 flat fee for each small parcel valued below €150, $170, sent directly from a non-EU country to customers in the bloc. Some more comes as the EU strives to bolster the continent's competitiveness by making the lives of European businesses easier through slashing red tape. The fixed fee will be introduced on a temporary basis and will stay in place until the bloc can settle on a permanent solution for taxing such imports. I'm going to go on a very blunt limb here. Putting any kind of fee for parcels sent from non-EU countries to a country in the EU is not exactly improving competitiveness. If anything, it's actually favoring deliveries made by people within EU countries, as opposed to non-EU nation wide delivery routes. Look, the EU, being the EU, whatever they want to implement amongst its nations, well, that's what a lot of countries in the EU have signed up for. And whilst there are benefits being part of the EU, there's also a couple of drawbacks at times. But of course, people can dispute those drawbacks. But of course, there's always ups and downs with being part of any organization and or alliance. But I will say, it is important to provide a competitive market for companies to be encouraged to innovate, as well as figuring out how to make themselves stand out to other consumers worldwide. However, to say that putting a flat fee on parcels that's been sent directly from a non-EU country, it's not exactly improving or bolstering competitiveness within the EU. It's only going to favour deliveries being made within the European Union and the countries within it, which there is no problem with having deliveries within the EU being a priority for such people living in those countries. That's all I have to say. I'll say that it is better to have a flat fee of €3 as opposed to having to pay 100 or a couple of €1,000 for the parcel. That would be ridiculous. That's drying up people's finances. But of course, if you do want to improve competition within the EU, try and look at the biggest companies that has a big market share in each sector and ask them to, like, I wouldn't say break up their operations. I would say create new companies that could still work with the original company in question. It's just to allow additional options for consumers to purchase or use such services from companies and organizations based in a European Union country. But other than that, uh, it's a start, but I think there are other ways to go around this, and there are other ways to deal with outside deliveries, exports, logistics, and just improving the competition within the EU as a whole. It's a good effort, but I think there are other ways of actually addressing such issues. That doesn't involve, of course, that doesn't involve having to pay additional fees. Not that I'm against paying not that I'm against paying fees for anything, but there are solutions that doesn't require to pay such fees at all. You got to look at the businesses themselves and how much of an influence and impact that they have amongst EU countries. That's a very good place to start. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake causes small tsunami waves off northeastern Japan. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued a tsunami advisory minutes after the 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck off Aomori Prefecture at 11:44 a.m. and lifted it about 2 hours later. Ocean trenches such as the Japan Trench and Tsushima Trench generate powerful trench-type earthquakes and have produced catastrophic events like the 2011 magnitude 9.0 megathrust quake. Observed small waves of about 20 centimeters reached some shores, according to local reports, while the advisory covered areas where waves up to 1 meter were possible and some evacuation orders were issued in Miyagi Prefecture, including Sendai City. Around 90,000 residents were ordered to higher ground, prompting municipal authorities to open temporary evacuation shelters offering blankets, food, and heating, while rail operators reported service disruptions and hotels faced reservation cancellations. The JMA warned the risk of a larger quake is elevated for about a week after the earlier tremor and urged residents in 182 municipalities and reassess emergency preparedness, with alerts lasting until midnight Tuesday. I hope people in Japan stay safe, they're not injured throughout this process, and of course that when the earthquake does strike, it doesn't cause much damage to Japan. That's only as if Japan wasn't prepared for a situation like this decades in advance, which they are. So I'm great. This is one of the reasons I like Japan, not just for its technological advances and quirky innovations that you won't see in other places, but also how they prepare themselves for the worst of extreme weathers and natural disasters, which are, in most cases, are certainly beyond human control. If you know, you know. But that's just me. Everyone's entitled to what they believe. But for real though, it's massive credit to Japanese authorities and municipalities for alerting their citizens and preparing for the worst that is yet to come. And hopefully it will all blow away and Japanese people can live their lives as they've always lived their lives. Yeah, it's still awful that an earthquake is still hitting Japan and it does cause some kind of damage. However, they know what they're getting themselves into, and they prepare themselves for moments like this for many decades. And they will prepare themselves for future events like this for many decades to come. Actress Amanda Seyfried says she's not effing apologizing for Charlie Kirk posting calling them hateful. On Wednesday, December 10th, Amanda Seyfried told Who What Where she refuses to apologize and stand by her remarks, saying she is free to have an opinion. And she is. And she has every right and is entitled to her opinion. Days after Kirk's September 10th killing, Amanda Seyfried, actress, commented 3 words: he was hateful, under an Instagram post compiling Kirk's disparaging quotes. Seyfried clarified on Instagram that she can be angry about misogyny and racist rhetoric and also very much agree that Charlie Kirk's murder was absolutely disturbing and deplorable in every way imaginable. Her remarks provoked backlash online and calls to boycott her films, with conservative critics accusing Amanda Seyfried of implying Kirk's killing was justified, which she denied while clarifying her stance. While on her press tour for The Testament of Anne Lee, Amanda Seyfried, actress, doubled down on her remarks and stands by her words. She also appears in the Housemaid hitting theaters December 19th, while Tyler Robinson, 22, is charged and awaiting trial. You know what? Regardless of what people's opinions on Charlie Kirk's unaliving, Amanda's right. Whilst she is entitled to the opinions she has, even it does show that she is against Charlie Kirk's opinions and the things he has said and done in the past. She's also said that what happened to Charlie Kirk is not okay. And that is not to say that she supports Charlie Kirk, to say that what has happened to Charlie Kirk is awful. I think this is the issue with not just what happened with Charlie Kirk, but a lot of stories as a whole, and many events that are going about. You can have a stance on one aspect of the story, but have a completely different aspect. It's not everything's black and white. You you can have layers and have different opinions on different aspects of the same story. And that's the case with Amanda Seyfried. She has said multiple times that she does not agree nor like the opinions of Charlie Kirk. However, she still said that what has happened to Charlie Kirk is not okay. It is absolutely disturbing. And I agree, it is disturbing. Well, not just how Kirk was being killed, but how most people react to it. And again, everyone is still entitled to not agree with Charlie Kirk, and they do not have to mourn his death. But there are many times, regardless of people's actions, there are lines that shall not be crossed. And if people ever cross those lines, even with the opinions which people are entitled to express freely, that does not mean they are free from consequences. How you express your opinions, rather than what the message of your opinions are, will also have a price on how you live your life and whatever job you currently have. So back to the story about Amanda Seyfried's Instagram post. Honestly, I couldn't agree more with her than I do right now, and I certainly do. And I would say the same thing for any other person, even if whether it be on the right, the left, progressives, traditionalists. You don't have to like these people. The execution on how you express your opinions on such people, that's where you have to be careful. And whilst you have every right to be outraged by the horrible tragedies that goes on in this world, there is a line that no one should ever cross, no matter how justified and how valid it might be. A few years or a few months from now, it will cost you many parts of your life, whether it be the job you work at, the friends, your family you have connections with, and just how people view you in public. Well, there will be people that will be on the same wavelength in such opinions. I'd say personally, yes, you are entitled to your opinions, no matter how many people disagree with them. But please be careful with how you express them, because you never know, you will encounter people that'll be no better than those who you are against strongly. That is my take on the situation. Italy's national strike, called by main union, disrupts transport and school services. On Friday, CGIL, Italy's largest trade union, called a national strike that disrupted transportation, health, and public schools across Italy, with tens of thousands of demonstrators joining nationwide. The strike targets the 2026 budget bill proposed by Premier Giorgia Meloni's Conservative government, with CGIL demanding more investment in healthcare, education, housing, and workplace safety. Rail operators reported cancellations and delays on long-distance and regional trains, following a major Portuguese walkout Thursday that severely disrupted travel and forced cancellations. Defended the budget bill's aim to lower fiscal pressure and aid families, while Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister, and Matteo Salvini, Transport Minister, dismissed the strike's Friday timing. The action follows a major Portuguese strike on Thursday and a 2-week interval since the previous Italian general strike by smaller trade unions, showing sustained labor unrest. Don't take worker unions seriously. It is important that even when there are workers demanding with whatever workers that currently remain actively in that workforce during those strikes, the world keeps going. And whilst these are strikes taking place across Italy, the rest of the world are still functioning as they do normal on a day-to-day basis. I don't have anything against unions making demands to employers. I think it is important to have some kinds of health and safety standards as the bare minimum and nothing less, in my opinion. Just anything else beyond health and safety standards, I'm not going to say that you should work harder, do better, be more active in the workforce. Because what if those people are active in the workforce? but yet not getting the pay that they want. It is complicated in my opinion. Whatever is negotiated that satisfies the workers that are unionized, I believe it's important that whatever you believe in should be standard. You should, you must stand. You must make a strong stance no matter what, and stick by them to the best of your abilities. Whilst there will be obstacles where you may potentially sacrifice some aspects, but never forget the main goal of why you're in this to begin with. It will last a few weeks at minimum, but I don't think it will last any more than a month. After that, something will be negotiated by then everyone will just resume with work. That's if the employers are like very stubborn and don't actually want to give in to such demands, even if they're minor, just small changes. Otherwise, something will be done. And even if the unionized workers don't get exactly what they want, there'll be some kind of change to the pay or the standards of work or whatever the workers are demanding. Something will be done. It's not going to be obvious, but it will be there, just out of sight. It'll be barely noticeable. And then the rest is just continue with work, as if the strikes never happened to begin with. That's that. On Thursday evening, law enforcement regained control of the farm, where a herd of cows is to be slaughtered due to a case of contagious nodular dermatosis. The slaughter of a herd of 200 cows began Friday morning at the farm of Orige, where a case of bovine dermatosis was detected after 2 days of agricultural protests aimed at preventing the euthanasia of the livestock. Veterinary services were able to access the barn, escorted by the how do I say that? Gen gendarmerie, which forcibly removed several hundred demonstrators on Thursday evening. Around a.m., the first slaughtered cow began to be loaded onto a dump truck by a forklift. The lifting of a blockade of the farm, whose access had been obstructed by tractors and tree trunks, was marred by clashes between law enforcement and protesters, primarily farmers affiliated with the Rural Coordination or the Peasant Confederation, but also some far-left activists, according to Interior Minister Laurent Nunez. 4 people were arrested Thursday evening during the police operation to take control of the farm located in the village of Le Bord sur Arize, but only remained in custody Friday morning, according to the Foire prosecutor's office. It's sad that you have to kill off livestock because of, well, I'm not sure if it's curable, but nonetheless, it is some kind of virus or disease that does affect the health of said livestock. And it's awful to see someone go through that. Not just people, but the animals too. Nonetheless, it's unfortunate that there is particular diseases and viruses going about somewhere in the world. And of course, I'm trying to think of something else to say on this. Honestly, all I can think about is just the cows that had to be slaughtered because of the dermatosis, the lumpfish dermatosis. And imagine what how this will affect the produce that the farmer would have to produce to then sell off to lorry drivers to then be sent off to the markets for people to buy the produce which they shall consume to ensure they can get through not just through the day, but the weeks, the months that go on. Whilst not many people know this, farmers are integral. They are a cornerstone foundation to keeping our way of living afloat, and also society, and also just essentially, to some extent, keep us alive. Because the foods that we eat most likely comes from the farms that produce the produce, the milk from the cows, the eggs from the chickens, and then there's the meat if the time comes for the livestock, unfortunately. But that's just way of life. That's literally how nature intended. And whether you agree with nature or not, nature has operated like that for hundreds of years. Hundreds of decades, in fact. Even before human existence, that's how nature has gone with the flow. Like how we go with the flow with our lives. So yeah, those poor unfortunate cows, they're no longer alive. And I hope that this doesn't happen to any other farmers in France or anywhere else in the world, because they're more than just an animal that produces food that we consume. They also kind of mean something to the farmers. And it's just this is equivalent as losing someone in your family, like one of your grandparents, aunts and uncles, your parents, and it's very damning that such moments happens to us, or would eventually happen to us at some point. But again, that is life for a lot of people. The Chinese whistleblower now living in the US is being hunted by Beijing with help from US tech. Li Chuanliang alleges Chinese authorities used Silicon Valley technology to track and harass him and relatives abroad under Operation Foxhunt and Skynet, which brought back more than 14,000 people from over 120 countries. The anti-corruption campaign escalated after Xi Jinping's 2012 rise, flagging 900,000 officials last year, with local conflict with Xi sparked by Xiaojun's arrest following Li's exposure. Internal slides and procurement records indicate companies like IBM, Oracle, and Microsoft supplied software to China's Economic Crime Investigation Bureau and disciplinary commissions, mining tax, payments, flights, calls, and tying golden tax, golden finance, and golden audit systems to identify associates and assets. These families suffered arrests, medical denials, and even deaths, with more than 40 relatives and associates detained, including Li's pregnant daughter. China sought an Interpol red notice later withdrawn, while the FBI and the White House called retaliatory efforts unacceptable. Legal filings show China accused Li Chuanliang of more than 3.1 billion RMB in alleged corruption while Li sought asylum in the US, and US officials called overseas retrievals a sovereignty threat after initial cooperation war. Now, whilst this is not, even though this is giving me a negative perspective on mainland China, that doesn't take away the fact that they still have technological advancements and infrastructure projects. And whilst people will argue that that's a lot of the projects in China that's been constructed is all thanks to the finances that are being affiliated with anything affiliated with the US or other economical powerhouses, make of that as you will. But what I will say in regards to this story, something is terribly wrong if a whistleblower from a certain country is being has been hunted down by said country to be brought back to said country. It sounds like as if this person is a threat to all of China's operations, and if anything goes out about China, it's over for them. Well, partially over. China will continue to be a trading powerhouse, and of course continue with their infrastructure projects and technological programs to show the world that China is ahead of the future. You won't see that in America. You know what? It is true. You certainly won't see stuff like that in America. Then again, and this applies to everything else, not just China or any other country. This apply, this will apply to anything. If you see any project, any organization, any technological advancement making it into the news, or you see anything that is futuristic, something unique that you will not see in other countries, how was that possible? What's the blueprint to produce such components? What's the components that were needed to produce such products or service? How did someone get the funding to do this? Because that's the thing. Everything that you see in this world, there's always a cost. And whatever the cost that might be, it varies. Not just on labor, but it also depends on the rarity, on the resources that are used to produce said component and or concept, as well as additional costs of just getting said component or concept through and about different borders across the world. Because again, the EU are pledging a €3 flat fee for parcels above or below €150 if the parcel's been sent from a country outside the EU. So there's costs like that from international organizations as to prioritize locally produced services and resources. And I'm all for that. I'm all for locally produced stuff, food, services, goods, and other stuff. Support your community to the best of your ability. Yes, please. But if you're going to get something from abroad, again, I don't mind getting stuff from abroad, but there's always a cost. And I'm not talking financially. There's more to life and the world beyond just money. You need to think about the logistics of getting things through from waterways, high road, motorways, the sky, through planes and helicopters. How do things and people get around? So, back to the story about the Chinese whistleblower living in the US now. Now, I am not saying he's in the wrong, but he's certainly not in the right either. And what I mean by that is, whilst Li Chuanliang is, of course, under threat, and he is being hunted down by Chinese authorities to be brought back to China because of the knowledge that he knows. But you need to ask yourself, why did Li even got himself involved in these operations to begin with? Now, benefit to the doubt if the answer would be that he didn't have much of a choice. He was made to be part of the operation. It's only quite recently he managed to escape that operation and flee to the United States for refuge and safety. Fair enough, I'll give him benefit of the doubt if that is the reason. But if not, still, why be complacent? Why get yourself involved in that operation to begin with? US applications from jobless benefits jumped to 236,000 last week, but continuing claims are lowest since April. For the week ending December 6th, The Labour Department reported initial claims rose by 44,000 to 236,000, topping the prior week's 192,000 and analysis 213,000 forecast. Hiring remains sluggish, with Americans looking for work facing challenges as job cuts by UPS, General Motors, Amazon, and Verizon recently may not yet appear in Thursday's claims. The Labour Department's 4-week average of claims rose by 216,750, while continuing claims fell to the lowest level in 8 months, the lowest since mid-April. The immediate effects include the unemployment rate inching up to 4.4%, and Americans collecting benefits falling to 1.84 million for the week ending November 29th, with November's job data delayed until next week. In broader context, jobless claims figures in recent years have remained historically healthy, while private payroll firm ADP estimated 32,000 job losses in November. And yet we're hearing people complaining that they can't even get a job to begin with. Companies and organizations are just letting people go, like, oh, you're costing this company way too much. We're gonna have to let you go, man. Off the door, bye bye, cheerio. And yet there are people, whether it be who have lost their jobs quite recently, or even university students that just graduated looking for a job. They still can't find a job. All the while, people who do have a job, well, not anymore, had been let go from their jobs for whatever reason. What the reason is debatable, but nonetheless, this world baffles me sometimes. And it will continue to baffle me, because it comes to a point, if you're always paying attention for the last few months or years, of seeing so much absurd, outrageous stories that you would never believe would ever happen. Something that you would see in satirical programs eventually become reality, just like the saying, what starts out as a joke becomes reality. And what is reality now is what we consider to be jokes back in the 2000s or even the 90s. Imagine going back in time to the 2000s or somewhere in the 90s, and people are watching programs featuring absurd, outrageous contexts or things that we wouldn't believe would even ever happen when we were children, only for us in this time now to tell people in the 90s saying, oh, you're watching this moment about this and that. Well, what if I told you in the future that actually happened? Like, there's a news story about this happening, and yeah, this person is getting serious jail time for that. Imagine those people's reactions. They would not believe it. And I don't blame them, because again, back then, whatever we think would be jokes would never would have happened. But here we are today. Those said jokes in television or satirical shows have now become reality. I'm just laughing at such silly stories that are going about today. Yep, that's life, man. But you know what? It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. And you know, it might actually will be. But for now, let's just have a laugh about it and just enjoy the moment we have today. Because it won't last forever. It's all downhill from here. For the most part, it's mostly downhill. And yeah, whoop-de-doo. King Charles announces good news of reduction in his cancer treatment. Finally, something good. Even if people don't like the royal family, at least there's something good going about now. Britain's King Charles III revealed his cancer treatment will soon be scaled back, crediting an early diagnosis, effective intervention, and following doctor's orders in a televised message Friday. Palace officials said King Charles III has not disclosed his cancer type or stage, citing advice from cancer experts that he should not address specifics. 2 months after the diagnosis, King Charles III resumed some public duties and made frequent appearances this year, including hosting President Donald Trump and traveling to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and the Vatican. The palace said ongoing measures will now move into precautionary phase and be continuously monitored to protect his recovery amid public focus on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor losing royal titles in October. The palace noted King Charles III has taken great comfort from leading a full life during treatment, contrasting with Queen Elizabeth II avoiding overseas travel in later years. Well, regardless of what people think of the royal family, whether it be now or a few years ago, or just entire existence of the royal family, it's nice to see that King Charles is recovering from his cancer treatment. Now, of course, not saying it will happen or I want it to. I really don't want that to happen, but at some point, and it will happen to all of us, that our time on this planet will come to an end, and then we will descend to whatever plane in our universe that might be. Regardless, it's great to see that King Charles has recovered greatly, and hopefully he will continue to be in good health for as long as he is still alive. And the same could be said for everyone in the royal family, or just everyone in general, even if in somewhere in the world it's not looking so good, and it's not. But at some point, eventually, we will pull through to overcome the biggest hurdles in our lives. And that is it for the episode.